Now we're going to take a little bit of earth paint and mix that in with the hide glue. So what we're doing now is, I guess you could refer to it as a crest or something, but a lot of arrows were identified by, the owners would have different markings or different paint, different design that they would put at the end of the arrow shaft. And all that does is just identify that it's your arrow. You don't have to do this, but you're just mixing the earth paint into the hide glue. And if you want, you can use painter's tape or something to make straight lines. Right now I'm just gonna kind of eye it and go by that. And all I'm gonna do is just put a simple blue band around this. It's up to you what you want to, how you want it to look. You can look in museums or old photos to kind of get a better idea of how these crests would look. But then you're just going to, create a band of the color around the end of the shaft there. You can attempt to do this after the fletching, but it's going to be a lot more difficult, so it's better to do it beforehand. And a lot of them, or most of them, probably had different bands of different colors, different design element with it, but I'm just doing this simple just to demonstrate how to do it. Okay, we'll let that dry and then we'll go on to attaching the fletching. Alright, so now we're going to do the fletching on the arrow. And so you have 3 feathers, and you make sure that all 3 of the feathers come from the same side of the wing, or if you're using tail feathers, they come from the same side of the tail, because that's going to affect the flight of your arrow. So one way is to use a knife and split the quill down the center, and then you'll have to clean it up with sandpaper or an X-Acto knife to get the quill to be as thin as possible, like how these ones are here. These ones were actually stripped, so that's the ideal way to do it. Some feathers are really difficult to do this with, and some it works. So you just kind of get it started and then rip it off like that. So if that happens, you usually don't have to clean up too much on the quill, and that's good to go the way that it is. So then you do that to 3 feathers. Like I said, they're all coming from the same side. And then just line them up and cut them to the same size. Our fletching on our plain style arrows are going to be anywhere from 6 to 9 inches, a lot longer than what modern archery is. And when you trim them, you want to leave a little tail on both ends, so that way you have something to wrap the sinew around. So first thing we're going to do is I have to heat up a burner to do the hide glue. So hide glue is made from chunks of rawhide that you simmer overnight for about 12 hours, and then the liquid that drains from that turns into hide glue. So we're going to take that and put a little bit in a pan and then mix it with some water. Hide glue works really well, but it's not, if it gets wet, it kind of comes undone. So just be mindful of that. But it's good to work with, because if you get it all over your fingers or your hands, it washes off really easy. So my arrow is already prepped and ready to go. I have the knock done, I have the shaft how I want it. So I'm going to just mix this hide glue up. Any kind of a paintbrush will work. You don't want to have your heat on too high, you just want it on a low temperature. Just enough to melt the glue into the water. Once you get it all mixed up, then you're just gonna take the brush, and you're going to go down about as far as you're going to have fletching on your arrow. So about the 9 inches or so, and you're just going to put a coat over that. Make sure you get everything on there, and then we're going to let that dry. Go ahead and shut it off. Okay, so when we're attached to the feathers here, you know, look where your knock is at. You're going to want to put one feather straight down the center of the knock, like that, and then 2 at the lower part. And so on the back side, there's not a fletching there. So it's just like with modern archery, because when your arrow sits on your bow, you want no fletching there to disrupt the flight of your arrow. So that's how your fletching is going to look, like that. So we did the first coat of hide glue onto the arrow shaft. Now we're going to take sinew. So this is real sinew from, you know, the back strap of a deer, elk, buffalo. This is a deer sinew. And so you're just going to pull off a strand like that. You can wet it with your mouth, or you can use a cup of water, washcloth, whatever you want to do. So once you have that, kind of get it wet a little bit. And that's what we're going to use to attach the fletching to it. So now I'm going to get my hide glue ready again. You don't want it to be super thick, just enough to where you know that it's got enough glue in there to make it stick. Okay, so then I'm going to take my first piece of fletching that I'm going to attach. Make sure that you got your tail cut. My first piece of sinew. I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to put a little bit of sinew on the end there. Then I'm going to take hide glue on the end. Then I'm going to take my sinew and I'm going to run that through the hide glue. Make sure you have your fletching facing up the right way. So this one is going to be the one that I'm going to put right into the center of the knock. So I'm going to take that and put it right on the tail of that feather, and I'm going to wrap it around go about once or twice, and then I'm going to take my next fletching, same thing, going to add a little bit of hide glue to the end. This is the part of arrow making that's kind of a pain, is attaching the fletching. And this one is going to come down on the bottom. And again, I'm going to wrap it around at least once. You might need to continue to add hide glue to your sinew if it starts to dry. Take my last feather, same thing, I'm going to add a little bit of hide glue to the end. And after I get the sinew wrapped around all three, I'm going to kind of stop and take a look and make sure they're positioned where I want them. And then I can wet my sinew again and completely wrap all three of them. And after I have it completely wrapped, I'll just take a little bit more hide glue and wrap it all the way around. And double check the positioning of them. And then at this point I kind of let it dry for a minute, and then I'll wash my hands, get all the glue off before I go ahead and complete putting those on. Okay, so now we're gonna glue the back parts of these quills. And the same thing, we're gonna take a piece of sinew, kind of get these positioned where we want them. Get the glue onto your sinew. Start to wrap. Historically, all the ones I've seen in the museum, the piece of sinew on the bottom part is not, it's not usually clumped together like on the top part of the knock is. It's usually spread out more as you go down around it. And I prefer to use a thinner piece of sinew down here, because when you shoot it, you know, it's possible to have that hit your hand because we don't have a arrow shelf on our bows. So I use a thinner piece of sinew down on the bottom part. And then I go back over it all with some more glue. And if you want, you don't have to, but sometimes it's good to take a piece of string. You could use artificial sinew and tie a knot around the top part of the knock, and then you're going to just go in between the veins of the feathers, and you're going to wrap it all the way around to hold it in place, and then you can cut it off when you're done. A lot of times I don't really do that. I don't concern myself too much if the feathers aren't completely stuck to the shaft. And then when you're done, you just take a pair of scissors and trim them up to the size that you want. Some people get really decorative with their fletching. They'll can leave a little piece on the ends like that, or even down at the end here. You can put plumes, different colored fluffs in there that, you know, to kind of decorate it up. You see a lot of that in older arrows. We use a lot of, nowadays you mostly use turkey feathers just because of the laws with predatory birds, but historically they used everything. They used eagle, hawk, owl. Some arrows you'll see where they use what they had, and they might have a variety of different feathers on one arrow. But for the most part, that's a completed arrow. And I glued the practice tip on the end, and that's that.